Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Capital and Kayfabe. I'm your co-host, JP John Podge from the Two-Man Power Trip. Of course, joining me is the political pundit himself, the author, the writer, the journalist, former campaign manager. He's Mr. Jack Hunter. Jack, welcome in. How you doing?
Good to be with you, John. Excited about our conversation today.
Now, before we get into wrestling, because there's a lot of crazy wrestling stuff going on, what is the latest with because I love this stuff. What is the latest with Sydney Sweeney and is she's a Republican and Trump was joking around about her? Oh, she's Republican. I love those ads and stuff like that. So, what's the latest with Sydney Sweeney?
Well, obviously the controversy erupted. She did an ad for American Eagle jeans where she works for them and is in commercials. And she said something about having good genes, Genes, and also Jeans, a play on words. Smart marketing, whoever came up with this. And of course, some people on the left said that she was promoting Nazism and white supremacy, which, I mean, what kind of world do we live in that somebody could see this jeans ad with a pretty girl in it? That's the conclusion you come to.
Yes,
it shows you just how much identity politics has captured the minds of so many on the left. A very illiberal way to look at the opposite of Martin Luther King. Let's judge people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin or the hotness jeans ad. Like, come on. But where we're at right now is American Eagle stock has gone through the roof. The company's doing great. Where Sydney Sweeney lives in Florida is a fairly conservative area. We have discovered, I guess, that she is a registered Republican. There's a video of her shooting guns, which is something registered Republicans living in Florida might do. And yeah, President Trump said something like, well, here she's a registered Republican. Those ads are great, which is very Donald Trump of him to say.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
What is the controversy? Like, my favorite part of this is she doesn't seem to give a damn. She's not like, oh, I'm sorry, I offended you. When she did that Rolling Stones video, I think we talked about this last week, I guess a year ago, Don't Get Angry With Me off the Rolling Stones new album. She was just like, being hot in the back of a car and dancing down Sunset Strip. She got criticized for that too. I think just people get mad at her because she's good looking or something. I don't know. But it's pretty stupid. I think the company and her taking it in stride and even laughing, and it's exactly what they should do, as we all should.
I feel like this makes the left look even worse. It's like, man, we're never voting for these people again if this is the way they act from like an attractive girl on a jeans ad. Like, what in the world? Like, this just sounds like almost utter insanity.
It's so stupid. You know, when Barack Obama was elected in 2008, Republicans, conservative Republicans, were sort of demoralized after going through 8 years of Bush Cheney. And Obama was popular. He won the election, obviously. He was cool. He had a cool factor, right? And so Republicans being so demoralized in what they stood for anymore, it had been war for 8 years and torture and awful things. They were wondering about Obama's birth certificate. And was he a secret member of the Muslim Brotherhood? Point is, they got really crazy with a lot of different conspiracy theories. Part of what that is they didn't know what to stand for anymore. Well, I think the left is in a similar position right now. This identity politics stuff, at the height of woke a couple years ago, they genuinely thought they had power over the culture. And, oh, we don't like this Dave Chappelle special? Well, we're going to walk out of Netflix, and Netflix is going to take that down because we said so. When they began to discover they didn't have that power, and Dave Chappelle's special stayed up, and then so many things after that started happening in defiance of woke orthodoxy, they don't have any power. Then Donald Trump got reelected. He beat the Democratic woman candidate that had she, her pronouns on her Twitter handle. Like, that got beaten. I think they don't know what to do with themselves. And if your religion, politics, where what color you are, whether you're gay or not, or whatever, is a priority more than who you are as a person. Bernie Sanders has said this. He's absolutely right. You're going to do stupid stuff like see a pretty white girl in a jeans ad and get mad and think it's Nazi. Like, you're going to be that crazy. To me, it's a mirror image of how some Republicans were acting when Obama got elected in 2008. Just the parties have flipped. So that's my take on it.
What is the latest on Obama? What's going on with Obamagate? Is there a latest? Is there any more news on this?
The news to me is that it looks like Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, has credible evidence that Barack Obama himself and members of his cabinet worked to create the hoax in tandem with the Steele dossier that the Hillary Clinton campaign commissioned, that Trump colluded with Russia in 2016, which is a hoax. It's not true. That didn't happen. There was a 2-year investigation into it. And the story for me is independent media is talking about this like crazy. Look, we're on a podcast here where we combine politics and wrestling, and you and I are talking about it. You know who's not talking about it? CNN, the New York Times, Washington Post. Legacy media is not talking about it because they see their job. They would never say it this way. But in 2025, their job is to serve the Democratic Party and to serve power, and not to challenge it or ask questions, but to make them look good. And Obama was their guy. And they did something like this. So they're just going to pretend it's not happening. Evidence be damned. If they really, really, really want you to believe that Trump colluded with Russia and there's no evidence, they're going to keep saying it anyways, which is exactly what they've done. So that's how that works. And to me, that's the real story. They've lost their power. More people listen to Joe Rogan or watch something like what we're doing now, or many of your other podcasts, than, I got to turn on the nightly news to see what NBC is going to tell me what's right and what's wrong. Nobody buys that anymore, or even tries to do it.
Very interesting too. I was reading yesterday that it's not anywhere on Google either that he, instead of hiring a lawyer, he hired other means to just scrub it from everywhere. So that's like the new legalese. Instead of, hey, I got to get a lawyer, I might be in trouble here, I'll just erase it from the public eye.
I can't tell you how many times I've looked for something on Google and been frustrated about not being able to find it, and then went to DuckDuckGo, and it's right there at the top.
Right.
Try DuckDuckGo if Google's doing their usual Googleness.
Yes, definitely. And depending on who you follow, they're obviously a lot of the independent media, they're pretty up on this stuff, and they're pretty good on it. Also interesting that he was kind of in the news somewhat recently for saying that he always had a gay mentor, a gay professor.
Mm-hmm.
And my God, the right was going crazy with that too, saying what, he said every guy needs a gay mentor or something. And then, the right was going crazy with that. So I feel like, I don't know if he did that maybe to distract from what was going on with Obamagate, but yeah, it worked.
Yeah, that's weird. I'm not anti-gay or anything. I have many gay friends, people I love and admire, but that's just a weird thing to say, right?
Yeah.
Does every man need a gay mentor? What the hell is that?
Very you would think they need a father figure, they need a mother figure. No, he's this gay mentor. That was a very, very odd statement.
That's that identity politics thing. The fact that someone's gay is if you told me everyone needs Pat Patterson to be their mentor because he knew how to dispense wise and sage advice to wrestlers, I would understand that because we're talking about Pat Patterson. The fact that he's gay has nothing to do with it. To say you should have a gay mentor is, that's identity politics.
Why not just have a good mentor or a responsible mentor? Or you know what I mean? Odd phrasing there by the former president. Very interesting. When you start getting into rabbit holes with him, I'm not going to get into it here, but beware when you start looking up him and all this other stuff. Crazy. JFK is involved with his grandpa. I mean, there's so many different rabbit holes with him. It's crazy. You don't know what to believe.
Well, if we're talking about Barack Obama and wrestling, do you remember in the 2008 cycle when Monday Night Raw had on the different candidates to say something wrestling-like? They had John McCain, they had Barack Obama. And Barack Obama was definitely the coolest of the three. He said, "Do you smell what Barack is cooking?" And, obviously Dwayne Johnson was hot then. But McCain and Hillary, they sounded nerdy and off. It wasn't good. It was pretty ugly.
Yes, I remember that. Not good. Yeah, he came off very well at that point. Yeah,
he like somebody had seen Monday Night Raw at least once or something, but not the other two.
Yeah, like he's into sports or into wrestling or something. He actually acted like it. Yeah.
Right.
Anything going on with Epstein and Maxwell and Trump? Is there anything new or newsworthy as far as that whole triangle of terror is concerned?
Trump directed, after being embarrassed and pressured, Trump directed Pam Bondi to release the grand jury testimony. I don't know what's going on with that, but as we speak, Trump has said again just today, this is just a hoax made up by Democrats, and there's nothing to it, and only losers are talking about this. He's hurting. That's his base. That is his. Democrats care about Epstein to the degree that they hate Trump, which is most of them. When Biden was president, you didn't see them going, "Joe Biden released the Epstein." No, they didn't care because it's always about Trump for them. But Trump's base does care. They want to know if there were criminal child sex rings and powerful people involved. That's terrible stuff. Justice should be sought there. But to the degree that he ignores it, it's not going away. It's not. You can find randos on Twitter that might defend it, but overwhelmingly, the leading figures in his movement, whether in politics or just entertainment or punditry, are like, nah, that's not a sufficient answer. We need to see the Epstein files.
What's going on with Marjorie Taylor Greene right now? She seems like the first Republican speaking out against Israel. It almost seems like what's going on with her? Is she turning her back a little bit on MAGA, or is she being more MAGA than MAGA?
She's being more MAGA than MAGA. Is MAGA? Let me ask you, John. Is MAGA whatever Trump thinks in any given moment, even if it's the opposite of what he just said 2 days ago, or is it the things he campaigned on, fixing the border and illegal immigration, ending endless wars, cutting spending, making America healthy again? These are things he campaigned on over and over, protecting free speech. I would think that's MAGA, and I would think that's why people voted for him. Not only red meat Republicans, but overwhelmingly independents voted for Donald Trump in 2016. A lot of people who voted for Barack Obama at one time voted for Trump. And 2024 is what we're talking about. Marjorie Taylor Greene is looking at endless dollars going to Israel. What they're doing in Gaza, which is, they say they're going after Hamas, but there's a lot of dead women and children that go beyond the stretches of defining just mere casualties that people at a minimum should be asking questions about. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is asking questions and has even used the word genocide. She was the first Republican member of Congress to do that. Bernie Sanders, who's an independent but usually votes with the Democrats, has not even called it a genocide, and he's been outspoken. And a genocide, to be clear, is the systematic destruction of a group. It could be racial, it could be ethnic, it could be religious. Palestinians are a group, and there's a whole bunch of them, and they're kind of caught in one area and have been for years. And it looks like after the October 7th terrorist attacks by Hamas on Israel, which were horrific, and Israel had every right to retaliate against, looks like they're doing a lot more than just going after Hamas. There's a lot of dead kids that didn't have a vote or say in any of this stuff that are being blown up. People being starvation. Even Donald Trump has said people are starving over there, for the people who deny it. And then they'll drop food and try to go get it and get gunned down, stuff like that. So I, have not always been in line with Marjorie Taylor Greene, but I applaud and have written about her stepping out and saying, no, this is wrong. As an American, forget Republican and all that crap. Even MAGA, this is just wrong.
Man, it's crazy out there. Like what's going on, and I don't know. Sometimes the reaction of the right has even been, obviously with Trump, has been kind of a little puzzling. Considering everything that's going on.
The neoconservatives, talk hosts like Mark Levin, their thing when it comes to Israel is they can do no wrong. They can do whatever. We shouldn't ask questions. I always make the point that by modern neoconservative Republican standards, if you read Reagan's diary from the 80s, the way he's critical of Israel and his dealings with them would be considered anti-Semitic by somebody like Mark Levin. Criticizing Israel's government is not anti-Semitic any more than me criticizing Washington, D.C. makes me anti-American. Criticizing Israel's government when my and your tax dollars are going to it also doesn't make me anti-Semitic. In fact, I'd be a fool not to be concerned about that on some level. But that's what they've always done, the real hawkish Mark Levin, Lindsey Graham. That's who Trump is sort of allied with right now. And who is speaking out against that? It's the people who's been with Trump all along, and the most so with Trump. People like Tucker Carlson, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, people like Steve Bannon are all saying this is wrong. Joe Rogan, who voted for Trump in 2024, hadn't planned on it, is criticizing what's going on in Gaza at our expense. Like, all that's happening. That's MAGA. That is MAGA. Trump could flip-flop every single day for the rest of his term, but that's MAGA and always will be.
So speaking of the White House, and of course, going to throw a little wrestling in here, Triple H at the White House talking about Make America Healthy Again, which you mentioned before. The presidential fitness test is now back, and obviously people are making jokes about Triple H and Trump, and whether they're happy about it, not happy about it, but he's in, right? Triple H, a little bit of WWE invading the White House for real.
Yeah, and he did the video of him spitting water at the White House and all that. Did you see RFK Jr.'s niece had a tryout during SummerSlam with
Yep.
WWE. I thought
Yep.
that was pretty cool. Now, a lot of those people try out never go the distance, but
Yeah.
pretty neat. If it doesn't go any further than that, still pretty neat. But hey, I'm wishing her well. I like the tie-ins, especially the podcasts we're doing between the political world and wrestling world, and certainly the many similarities, because they certainly are.
I remember the presidential fitness test. I mean,
Mhm.
they got
Arnold,
rid of it afterwards, but I remember it, right? I mean, that's a
yeah.
good idea.
It wasn't Mr. T part of that. Back, I'm a little bit older than you, but I don't know. I think he might have been part of that. Bruce Jenner, Arnold, I don't know.
Yeah, I think T was for sure. It's just interesting that they're bringing it back now. But I like kind of the vision of where they're headed. Like, let's make everybody healthy again. Make that focus
Yeah,
again at school. It's a good idea and principle.
yeah. RFK and what he's done so far is one of the better. Trump promised to do something about legal immigration and has. I might not agree with all the ways he's done it, but he said he was going to and has. And the Make America Healthy Again. I think RFK Jr. is kind of being let loose. And when I see the experts that got COVID so wrong and so many other things wrong really mad at RFK Jr., I'm like,
Yeah, you must
he's
be
doing
right.
all the right things. And I'm not an expert in that field, but hell, not half the people criticizing him either.
And he also wants to lower drug prices, which means that it would go up in other countries, but ours would go down. So this way, the drug company doesn't necessarily lose money. It's just that Americans stop getting ripped off, and now the other countries can start not getting ripped off, but paying their fair share.
Yeah, and the reason it costs so much is the middlemen and the insurance companies. And Obamacare has pros and cons, but one of the cons is that it's in bed with the insurance companies. Like, it's the best thing that's ever happened to them. That's why insurance is less affordable. Those with pre-existing conditions are more protected. I know I have family members that's helpful to them. But so many families just can't even afford it anymore. Obviously, prescriptions are part of that equation.
I know. I don't know if you heard this. It was kind of a weird rumor that was thrown out there, but now with Triple H involved with Trump, obviously Linda McMahon was already involved with Trump,
Right.
but that's Triple H's mother-in-law. It's just so interesting. They were talking about it, and I know Trump loved Hogan. They were buddies since the mid '80s, so they were friends for a long time. Obviously, he supported MAGA. He had that awesome speech at Madison Square Garden for Trump, like all that stuff, like all kind of comes together. So there was a rumor that in 2026, Trump wants to do a Hulk Hogan memorial show at the White House kind of thing. But it would be a WWE show. I don't know if you heard that or think that's true or think that's possible. I know we were kind of saying UFC because of Dana White, but now
Right.
with Triple H being involved with the White House, do you think that is possible? They're going to do like some sort of show, like an American show?
I mean, anything's possible with Donald Trump, good or bad, and certainly something like that. Haven't you always got the impression, maybe this is just me, Trump shows up at the UFC shows. He's friends with the WWE people, certainly Vince back in the day, and Hulk Hogan, Triple H, Linda worked in his administration, worked for his PACs. That he thinks himself as like a tough, strong dude, and he likes hanging around with other tough, strong dudes. That's kind of my read on that.
Yeah.
And if they support him, all the better. And yeah, that's like a dude thing. Like, I don't know.
Yep.
There's
Yeah,
nothing
he
wrong with it.
always
I'm not criticizing.
like he was always involved with boxing. He kind of
Yeah,
brought boxing to Atlantic City, if you think about it, or
playing as a New
re-brought it
Yorker.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, Madison Square Garden, Don King back in the day, all that kind of stuff. I saw Don King at the 2016 Republican Convention and tried to get a picture, but didn't quite make it.
Oh man, Donnie King. So WWE, UFC, White House. It seems like insane, but I think it would actually create a ton of interest just from like everybody wanting to cover it. Be like, wow, this is cool. Like they're doing stuff at the White House.
Yeah, and especially with wrestling, I believe, and WWE in particular, being more mainstream now than it was a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I gauged stuff by that. I was in DC and I was with my girlfriend, and a girlfriend she knew who lives there, who I just met. And she goes, I'm taking my son to wrestling. And I looked at her. I go, your son's young. She's like, yes. I go, Cody Rhodes. She goes, how did you know? That's the kind of metrics that I look at. She didn't know anything about wrestling. She knew her son wanted to go, who was like 6.
Yep.
And I knew what the kids were into. And she's like, how did you know that? To me, that's what Hulk Hogan was doing in the 80s. That's what John Cena pulled off for a while. That's a big deal.
Yes, love that. To getting the kids back there. I was at SummerSlam night one. There obviously brought my son, who's 9, but there was a lot of kids there. So they're starting to bring the younger fan base back in all the families.
How was that being there with the Seth Rollins and everything?
That was crazy. It was funny too because Punk wins, everybody kind of went nuts for Punk. They were chanting for him all night. CM Punk, the obviously huge fan base, but even in the Northeast, I think even bigger. So I mean,
Right.
they were loving Punk. He's crying. He won the title, and my son's like, "All right, I guess we can leave if you want to beat the traffic." And I was like, "Let's just wait 1 second." I was like, I just have a feeling like something is going to happen." And then his music came on. We're both like, "No!" Not that we're not really Seth Rollins fans, but we're more Punk fans. So it's just like, "No!" And then he cashed in, and the crowd went nuts. I mean, that was a huge pop, like a what, like a shock
Yeah.
pop.
And so many people kind of knew it, but it doesn't take away from the excitement. When they didn't do
Yes.
the Chiron down low, like new champion CM Punk or something, because sometimes they'll do like executive producer Paul Levesque and
Yes.
Lee
Yep.
Fitting.
Yep.
But they didn't even get that far before Seth came out. So yeah, I thought it was great. I like night 2 overall, but I think that moment in the main event of night 1 might have been one of the biggest things besides, Cody and Brock and all that.
Yeah, that was great. I feel like they start off the show good because everybody loves Jey Uso and everybody loves Roman. So like you starting off the show good, but everyone's going to remember the end. So they remember Punk beating Gunther in a good match, and then obviously Rollins cashing in the ruse of the century, them tricking everybody. But I thought that was cool. Just a huge shock. Just really, even if some people did know, the majority of people didn't know, and their reaction obviously told that because it was a huge pop.
Well, I remember Sean Ross Sapp at Fightful reporting that like nobody had any inkling about Brock Lesnar. Him, none of the people, in wrestling journalism. And hats off to Triple H and his team, like to be able to do that in 2025.
Yep.
That's hard. I think
Literally nobody
I
saw
do
that. Yeah.
I do wonder, WWE legal, I guess TKO legal, had to be comfortable enough to bring him back with what's going on with the lawsuit.
Yep.
And I would assume they know things we don't know. But I would also weigh that against TKO's history of, when Dana White got into some trouble with domestic abuse and some other things, and, how tolerant they are of some of that, or depends on the name, McGregor, all that stuff. So I don't know. I'm not the only one talking about that, obviously.
Yeah, they apparently 4 weeks ago they went to legal and legal approved it because I guess technically speaking, I know people could say he did this or he did that. A lot of that is hearsay. A lot of that is
Yeah.
through text messages, but it was admitted he never met her and all this other stuff. So you could do this, you could say that, you can kind of take Vince's word that he was really, setting this thing up, but it never actually came to fruition, never actually happened. So people can say, oh, there was intent there. Was there or wasn't there? I mean, you could just deny intent and then it never really happened. So he never really did anything. So I guess legal said they looked it over 4 weeks ago and he was free and clear to return. So, I mean, obviously Brock Lesnar's back. That was, I think, the pop of the weekend. That was a huge pop.
Yeah, I think you're right. And look, I think people who do horrible things need to be punished.
Right.
But I also believe in due process and our system, which is imperfect. But there needs to be a system, and it's the system we have. I don't like mob justice, whether that's actual physical people or online. I don't support it. I'm against it. Even if the person's guilty, well, let's determine that the right way, not just somebody's opinion or pretending something's true. As we as we talk about this, there were reports from God knows who that MVP and AEW and Speedball Mike Bailey were sideways. And I was like, that don't sound right to me. And did you see the video that those two made?
Yeah.
Where the Hurt Syndicate walks up to Speedball and MVP's ordering around Hurt Syndicate and they're telling each other to F off. They were making fun of the report, obviously.
Yeah. Yep.
But I thought that was hilarious. But point being, taking that as the gospel, no, don't do that. Use your brain a little bit. I like, if Dave tells me something or Sean Ross Sapp, or, that means more to me than some random person on the internet I've never heard of. People have been doing this for a second. That doesn't mean they're always right. And those two people I mentioned, when they're not right, sometimes will say they're not right. And that goes a long way with me too. So yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that, but there's that.
Yeah, the court of public opinion, if you will, and like the rumor mill and stuff. And yeah, or maybe there could have been an issue with MVP, but they squashed it. But these people won't let it go. Like weird stuff like that they try to perpetrate.
And it can snowball quickly. When I worked for Senator Rand Paul and would help him with speeches and communication, he's a big civil libertarian, due process and accusing things people of things is a serious thing. He brought up the example of Richard Jewell. Do you recall Richard Jewell? Clint Eastwood made a great movie with wrestling fan Paul Walter Hauser in it. Here's a guy who was kind of heroic during the 1996 Olympic bombing in Atlanta. He was a security guy, kind of a overweight guy. The rest of law enforcement knew he looked up to them, but he wasn't quite up to snuff, but harmless and trying to do his job. Using his skills, he thought that there might be a bomb in the area, and he told a lot of people to go to another area before it went off, and it did hurt some people, but he probably saved some people. Well, he FBI suspect because he fit some profile, and in a matter of a couple days, late night TV was calling him the Unibubba, comparing him to the Unabomber, and basically the court of public opinion had decided that this guy was responsible for the bombing. It turns out he wasn't. They caught the person who did it later, and it kind of wrecked Richard Jewell. That's what the movie's about, directed by Clint Eastwood. I would encourage everybody to watch it. Kathy Bates is in it as well, does a great job. But it's a true story of a guy who was just doing his job. And when you learn all the facts, he actually did something heroic in saving some people, being harmed at least, who was dragged for it as the criminal, as the perpetrator. So whether you're talking about Richard Jewell or Brock Lesnar or anybody else, due process matters.
Very, I don't know, very funny to me, like some of that stuff, like as far as like, I was even interviewing somebody, he said, and it's funny, he texted me after the fact, he said, man, I sounded dumb on that one or something. He said, Lesnar will never return. He's never coming back. And then all of a sudden Lesnar's back. So I don't think Triple H and WWE, I think, which I do like, they don't take the court of public opinion. They don't judge by that at all, and they don't go by, they do what they want to do kind of thing. I know people get upset by that, and they're like, oh, it's the culture and blah blah. It just seems like they're just not going to kowtow to the woke mob.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. That's not to say they don't listen. I think Triple H listened to the audience more than his predecessor did.
That's for sure.
I remember they were in Saudi Arabia 2 or 3 years ago, and LA Knight had just got to WWE. He was Max Dupree for a while, and he just got back to beating LA Knight. And Triple H was in charge. But I remember Triple H was speaking in Saudi Arabia, and that Saudi Arabian crowd was chanting LA Knight, LA Knight. He looked up, he looked surprised, like, oh, that's who the Saudis like? But you saw LA Knight get a real push after that, and also American fans wanted to see this guy. If Vince was there, we saw what he did. He didn't care what the audience said. He was going to make this guy, a manager with, Maxine and all this stuff.
Isn't that funny looking at that too with LA Knight? He's jacked. Why the hell would this guy be a manager? Yeah, what the hell? And he's a good wrestler.
Right. Well, when Adam Cole left WWE, one of the reasons is Vince McMahon, if he came to the main roster, wanted to make him Keith Lee's manager. Like, what the hell is that? So I don't think I almost say I absolutely believe that Triple H wouldn't have done that, granted how he booked him in Black and Gold NXT. So
it is weird when like thinking about Vince and some of those like ideas and stuff. Cole, I could see a little bit just because besides him being like a good wrestler and all that stuff, like he's skinnier, maybe he doesn't have big arms, gets skinny, like so I can see Vince like, oh, this guy's more of like a manager. But LA Knight's like jacked to the night. LA Knight might be one of like the most in shape guys on the roster, and this guy is going to be a manager. It's like, what? Crazy.
He's one of
Vince
the
is nuts.
In shape guys. Vince age was always a thing. I think LA Knight's around 40. But who cares? Look at him.
So is Reigns and Cody and
look at the Hurt Syndicate. They're both 50. Like, who cares? Look at that. That's what matters. But when Vince thought that Macho Man was too old to wrestle, I think he was 38 years old. But look at him, and he just went on to wrestle in WCW. It kills me. Part of the reason people like LA Knight is it reminds them of The Rock and Stone Cold in the Attitude Era. The way he talks, the things he does in the ring. And Vince, that's one of your two big eras. Why would you not want to give people that feeling again through this one guy? Like, I don't get that at all. That doesn't make sense. Of course you want that. I think Jim Cornette's like, oh, people are criticizing this guy for copying one of the biggest periods, the biggest stars, and the biggest part of wrestling. Oh, what a dummy. Nobody should do that. Jim Cornette was making fun of the critics of LA Knight who say he did that. I agree with Jim Cornette on that completely. How many Nature Boys did we see? That's not even Ric Flair's original thing. He took it from Buddy Rogers. And God bless him for doing it, because we got Ric Flair. Like, that's just something wrestlers.
Come on, look at Hulkster and Jesse the Body Ventura. They were copying superstar Billy Graham.
Yeah, so did Dusty. Half of
Yep.
the sayings, funky like a monkey and all that stuff. Dusty Rhodes, Hulk Hogan's copying Superstar.
Scotty Steiner copying superstar as
Yeah.
well, obviously. Yeah, a lot of guys.
Hell,
So
look
yeah,
at
sometimes you copy from the best.
I have a Rock and Roll Express T-shirt with Ricky and Robert's faces on it. And I went to see the Mick Foley one-man show last week, and he's like, "Is that Ricky and Robert?" He knew who it was, but 9 times out of 10, when people see that shirt, they're like, "Oh, Marty Jannetty and Shawn Michaels, the Rockers. I love them." That's what they know. But my point is, the Rockers were obviously copying the Rock and Roll Express, but no less great, right?
Yeah, true. Very true. So what did you think of Cody versus Cena? I feel like this is Cena's best match, arguably maybe ever. He really stepped up here, especially since Manny was so bad.
Absolutely. I couldn't believe the length, like Cena going that long, and it being his best match in years. And I'm not a harsh Cena critic on that. Like, everybody doesn't have to be Kenny Omega. It's okay. I like Kenny Omega. I want to see that from him, but like, it doesn't have to be that. I grew up watching wrestlers with bigger, larger than life personalities that as an adult, I'm like, they were all right in the ring, but that's not what it was about. I thought Cena and Cody told a great story. I think pretty much Cody was going to win. Cena's heel turn ending the way it did so abruptly. I thought he was going to kick like Cody in the balls or something and like still be heel for a night and then turn later or something. But no, he's a face now and wrestled like it. And that's what people wanted to see. And it was a better match for it. And of course you had the Brock Lesnar surprise after all that.
Yeah, really, really well done. Way to finish night 1 and night 2 on a high note to me. I feel like great stuff. 2 shockers, great stuff there. I do think that it is funny though. Looking back, the Cena heel turn will now go down infamy as one of the worst ever. Like that was just terrible, horrible job.
Right.
He wasn't into it. They're not changing his merchandise. It was lazy. Just get out of it, and they did, and he did a lot better as a babyface.
And when Brock came out, it was clear it just wasn't about the match with Cena at SummerSlam. They need a heel Lesnar against a face Cena for what they're going to do with that. So I guess it all makes sense, but kind of comical the way it all went down. I thought that SummerSlam was excellent. Both of the big companies, AEW and WWE, put on different types of pay-per-views or PLEs, but rarely do either disappoint. And I'd say that even more about AEW. I can't think of the last time they had something even remotely close to a stinker and something that I paid $50 for.
Yeah, AEW to me, like the pay-per-views are usually good. It's hard pressed to find one that isn't good. Maybe they're a bit long, of course, which has been a big complaint. But usually the TV show is lacking. But I don't know. Lately, it's been getting maybe back on track lately. A lot of MJF, which I like. Maybe too much MJF. What do you think?
I don't think so. I love him too. It could be hit and miss with Dynamite and Collision. There's times that I think Collision was a better show than Dynamite, and I like that. I like, cool, thank you. But AEW, I think, is hitting on all strides in general right now. I, like a lot of people, was kind of tired of the Death Riders thing in Moxley, but viewership has gone up, attendance is slightly ticked up. That angle with Mox running around with the belt and the briefcase, I think elevated Hangman, obviously, who's the new champ. It helped Swerve Strickland. It helped Will Ospreay. It helped their top baby faces even go further. And as fans, we like that. So, and that angle did it. So Tony Khan and whoever else worked on that, y'all were smarter than all of us, I guess, in the end.
Do you think that the residency, like that they do in certain places, do you like that or you're not like that?
I do. Maybe by like the last one, you're a little tired of it, but overall, I liked when they were in Chicago. What we got, like 6 shows in Chicago between Dynamite and Collision. I like that particular arena. I looked it up. It was built in 1929. Had a secret room there that he would use. All kinds of neat history. It was a mob hub. That's neat. Tony Storm standing on that balcony in that building was just perfect, doing her promos in this, opera theater looking thing. I like the residencies. I'm eager to see what they do in Philadelphia. I like the small, if you're not going to fill 10,000, 12,000 seats, or not even 4,000, 5,000, 6,000, depending on the city you're in and what's going on, I would much rather see 1,100 people like they had in Chicago that are excited and loud and crowd than a half empty arena, which is what they were doing for whatever logistical reason. So I like it. I'm a big fan of it. I think it's cool. I wish I lived there. I'd be at every one of those shows.
I know ECW ran that place in the past too, so it's not like it's not a wrestler or hasn't been a wrestling venue. It's been used for wrestling before.
Right. Yeah. No, I dig it. I thought it looked cool.
I was shocked. There was a lot of people online, even like churchy guys, stuff like that, complaining that you just ran a baseball stadium, which 27,000 people, great turnout for the pay per view, and then you run that arena. I was like, I don't see the correlation. I don't know why they were complaining about that. I thought it looked
I
cool on TV.
I heard some people complaining about it. One's very famous. I won't bring it up right now, but I had the same reaction you
Yeah,
did. I'm like, dude, if they ran a Coliseum with only 3,000 people in it, you'd be saying, why are they running a Coliseum with only 3,000 people in it? But they're running one that they can only fit. And then you're saying, well, why did it like sometimes they just can't win. I think they made the right decision. All those shows, the quality of the shows differed, but in that setting, that was good to me. And I guess the next residency is going to be in Philly, and I don't know where else they might be doing it. I like what they did was that in the Dallas area?
yeah.
I liked all that, and they've had a Ring of Honor show or two there as well. It looked good.
I just think it's weird. It's like you guys loved it when it was in Hammerstein Ballroom in New York City, but you
Right.
didn't like this place. It's the same exact venue, give or take obviously some of the look, but it basically holds the same amount of people, and it's like the same look. It's a ballroom, like that kind of feel
Yeah.
to it. But you love that, but you didn't like this. I was like kind of surprised by it.
It's weird when Ring of Honor was still owned by, I guess, Sinclair, pre Tony Khan Ring of Honor. I would order most of those pay-per-views. I like the product, but sometimes maybe the card wasn't exactly what I wanted to see. If it was in Hammerstein Ballroom and I was on the fence about the card, I would always order it because it was at Hammerstein. I liked that. Yeah, I don't understand the thinking there either. I went to see Metallica recently with some metalhead friends of mine around my age, and the openers were Pantera and Suicidal Tendencies, which we were excited about. I'd never seen either of those bands.
Nice.
And the conclusion that we arrived at was this is cool, but Pantera and certainly Suicidal Tendencies should be seen in a club. They're a stadium band, but those two bands, especially Suicidal, should be seen in a club. We enjoyed it, but it's just a different experience. So wrestling can be that way too.
Ooh, it's kind of a good point because I saw at Giant Stadium. I mean, there was 82,000 people there. Pantera open, they were awesome. But I was like, man, they're joking around with my buddy. He's a huge Metallic fan. So am I, but he's even bigger than me. He's just I go, man, it's gonna be tough to top this. And then Metallica had, the lights, everything. I was like, yeah, they're the stadium band. Yeah, they're they know what they're doing out here.
What tickled me, I saw Metallica on the Injustice for All tour when I was 15 years old. That was my birthday present. That was in 1989. So The Cult was opening. And that's when Firewoman was a new single. So I saw that, and they were like, yeah, F you, blah, you effing people, we're going blah, like that, right? Like the guys who had the metal up your ass t-shirts, that era Metallica. When I saw them just a couple months ago in Charlotte, Pantera and Suicidal were like, how are you effing people doing? F this and F that, blah, blah, blah. What you would expect them to do. Not a single cuss word from Metallica. Because there were kids there were families. They're pros. They're like, yeah, that grainy video you saw during the Kill 'Em All tour, we're proud of that, but that's not how we talk on the stage anymore. We're even going to play those songs, and they were great, but that's not how they behave. They said, like, hey, how y'all doing tonight? We love you, stuff like that. But I'm like, those guys get it. They're an arena band.
Definitely. And that intro was awesome. The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. That's such a good intro when when
so
they're
cool,
coming out. That's
Sergio
awesome.
Leone.
Obviously that song they use that song obviously for S&M and stuff, but that song is just freaking great. What an intro. I was like, man, that gets you pumped.
I saw the Ramones 2 or 3 times, and they would use that song back then to come out too.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
I wonder
awesome.
if that's where they got the idea.
That's so great. I just refer to it as good, bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
But that's just a awesome song. The thing is with, we're talking about Metallica, but we kind of got off on a tangent. I was just wondering, MJF Hurt Business, what's going on with them? It seems like they ended it kind of abruptly almost, like unless it's continuing and there's some sort of tease where maybe it's a swerve, bro.
Yeah, I've seen some fans speculate that they're still working together and just doing this to fool people. I think the whole thing's weird. I like all of those guys. The Hurt Syndicate's like one of my favorite things in wrestling and AEW specifically, but just like in wrestling. And I love MJF, but like to me, the Hurt Syndicate are on the edge of just going ahead and being full-blown baby faces. Nobody is booing them. Everybody wants
they're cheered, yeah.
Yeah, they beat the crap out of Private Party, who were supposed to be the faces, and people loved it. Like, my fellow South Carolinian, one of my favorite things in wrestling is watching Shelton Benjamin throw people around. I love it. More. Give it to me. So MJF, who has been a babyface, but really needs to be a heel, and he's one of their top heels. How does that work if they're going to be face eventually, or maybe they're not? I think it's kind of weird. I've enjoyed some of what they've done.
He's feuding right now, kind of like Mark Briscoe, although since he beat him, maybe that's over. Adam Page, the Hurt Syndicate, and he just beat Averno with CML. He's the lightweight champion, which is kind of like really, in essence, we were talking about, it's almost like that's like the big belt, though. That's kind of he's like the world champion almost. Like that's like the big belt CMLL. So he's got like 4 or 5 infused, and then Mystico is still sticking out there because they had that match and in Mexico, and there wasn't really a clean finish. So he's got a lot going on. They're putting a lot of weight on his back right now.
I like that, and maybe that's part of my Jim Crockett growing up. Like Dusty was the good guy, and Ric Flair was the bad guy. If there were other bad guys on the card, they might even help the Horsemen sometimes. So they're not, they don't like the good guys, and the good guys don't like them. When something bad would happen to Ricky Morton or Dusty, Rock and Roll Express were out there, Magnum was out there, all the baby faces were there. They were a team. So I like the idea. I mean, Dusty would have multiple feuds with people. Ric Flair, as the champion, would have a couple people wanting that belt at any given time. Usual, there'd be a focus, as I think like MJF and Hangman might be, but there were other people that wanted that belt that would say so. I like that. Growing up with Jim Crockett, that's how wrestling was.
So as far as WWE and AEW right now, it just seems like they're both in a good spot. Just creatively, it seems like both in a positive direction. Obviously, WWE with 113,000 tickets sold and making $10 million over a weekend, they're doing very well. But AEW, nothing to shake a stick at. They're doing well right now, even though some people say they might not be. I think they are. I think they're in a good spot.
I think they're finding their stride. Right now, the wrestling I look most forward to is Dynamite on Wednesdays and their pay-per-views. But WWE is right below it. A year ago, it would have been WWE. That AEW was right below it. I'm interested in both, but they're doing different things at different times. I think that Cody trying to finish his story Bloodline era is a little bit better than what's going on right now. But you got to finish that story at some point. He did, but what's going on right now in WWE is still pretty awesome. I love El Grande Americano. That's one of my favorite things they're doing.
Crazy. Not to say that Ludwig Kaiser is El Grande Americano, but let's just say the new El Grande Americano knows Spanish really, really well. I don't know if you saw that video. He actually speaks like fluent Spanish. So that's kind of a interesting upgrade, if you will, for El Grande Americano.
When you grow up in that lucha culture, a lot of Spanish. That's what you speak. So.
Not Germany. I don't know if you're growing up in Germany. I don't know how you.
I don't know what
possibly
that's what you're talking about. Yeah, that's El Grande Americano.
If that is true, if I might be wrong, but if that's true, it's like, wow, how the hell does this guy from Germany know all this Spanish? But I love that stuff. That's some good stuff. Yeah,
when they said that El Grande Americano was out with injury, I was kind of bummed, but I'm glad he healed as quickly as he did.
Yes, and hopefully Chad Gable, who also got hurt around the same time, hopefully he's
I hope to see him back eventually too. Yeah, those guys are friends. They lend each other boots.
Yep, he'll be at the main event in AAA and AAA Mania on August 16th on the YouTube channel.
Yeah, I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see WWE's presentation of AAA. I'm excited to see it in Mexico, which of course it's in Mexico. I'm also excited. It starts at 9:00. Did you see that?
Oh no, I didn't see that. No.
Yeah.
Wow.
I like to have a couple drinks when I watch wrestling. That's part of it. Some snacks. But I don't like doing that at 1:00 in the afternoon. As pay-per-view.
You kind of ruin the whole day there.
Right. Yeah. I don't like drinking in the daytime. It's a weird thing particular to me. But 9:00 at night, that's about perfect. So that's kind of exciting. That's party time. Yeah.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
That's kind of, it feels UFC-ish because their show doesn't even start to 10, right? Like,
yeah, definitely.
You're up there at 1:00 in the morning watching the main event.
Yep. All right. Let's wrap it up this week. We talked a lot of wrestling, a lot of politics here. Jack, where can everybody find and follow you as far as social media?
Best place to find me is on X at JackHunter74, and everything I write and do and videos and running my mouth, you could all find it there.
You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2ManPowerTrip. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in this week. We'll see you next week for the next Capital and Kayfabe. We'll see you next week.